Rural country where your nearest neighbor is a mile away, through dense woods, and the nearest grocery store is a solid hour's drive. It was the kind of place where cell service was a myth, and the only light at night came from the moon or your own headlights. In an area like that, the community is weirdly tight-knit, even though we're all spread out. If you saw someone on Christmas night a few years ago, the day had been perfect, honestly. I spent the entire morning and afternoon at my parents' place. We did the whole traditional thing: huge ham dinner, opening presents by the fire, watching football. It was warm and safe inside. Outside, however, the temperature had dropped drastically. It was one of those bitter, dry colds that hurt your face the second you step out the door. The wind was whipping through the valley, shaking the bare trees. My girlfriend Jenkins lived even further out in the sticks than I did. To get to her house, you had to take this one specific 2-lane road that wound over a mountain. We called it the Gap. It was 20 miles of nothing. No gas stations, no houses, no streetlights. Just 20 miles of winding asphalt with steep drops on one side and thick ancient forest on the other. I left my parents' house around 1 a.m. They told me to just stay over, but being a dumb teenager in love, I wanted to get back to Jenkins' place so we could have our own Christmas morning together. I promised my mom I'd drive safely, grabbed a plate of leftovers, and hopped in the truck. The drive started fine. I had the heat blasting and the radio turned up, though the signal was already getting static-filled the higher up the mountain I drove. By the time I hit the Gap, the radio was dead silent, just white noise. I turned it off. The silence in the cab was sudden and heavy. I was driving way too fast. I knew the roads like the back of my hand, so I was doing about 80 miles per hour in a 45 miles per hour zone. I was flying. The high beams of my truck were cutting through the darkness, illuminating the trees that lined the road like prison bars. It's a hypnotic feeling, driving alone at that speed in the pitch black. You start to zone out. You feel like you're the only person left on Earth. I was about 10 miles in, the dead center of the woods, when my headlights caught something on the shoulder. My brain took a second to register what it was. At first I thought it was a deer standing on its hind legs, or maybe a bear. But as I closed the distance at 80 miles per hour, the shape resolved into a person. It was a man walking on the gravel shoulder, heading in the same direction I was. He wasn't wearing reflective gear. He was just a dark silhouette against the darker woods. I flew past him in a blur. Immediately, my conscience kicked in. It was 1:30 a.m. on Christmas night. It was maybe 15 degrees outside, easily cold enough to kill someone if they were out there too long. I thought about the rule of the mountain. You don't leave people stranded. If I kept driving and this guy froze to death, I didn't know if I could live with that. I figured his car must have broken down miles back and he was walking for help. I slammed on the brakes. The truck fishtailed slightly on the cold asphalt before coming to a stop. I checked my rearview mirror. All I could see was the red glow of my taillights reflecting off the road. I threw it in reverse and backed up, driving backward down the wrong side of the road for about 100 yards. As the guy came back into view of my reverse lights, my stomach gave a weird lurch. He wasn't dressed for hiking or walking for help. He was wearing heavy, dark camo gear, and in his right hand, he was gripping a compound bow. Now looking back, this should have been the moment I floored it and got out of there. Who walks down a main road at 1:30 a.m. with a high-powered hunting weapon? But my rational brain tried to make sense of it. It's deer season, I told myself. Maybe he's a poacher. Maybe he was tracking a wounded buck and got lost and came out on the road. I rolled down the passenger window just a crack as he approached. He was tall, and he had a hood pulled up over a beanie, so I couldn't see his face well. Just a shadow where eyes should be. Need a lift? I yelled over the idling engine. He stopped walking. He didn't smile. He didn't look relieved. He just turned his head slowly toward the truck. He looked at the door, then at me. "Yeah," he said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. I unlocked the door. "Throw the bow in the back, man. There's room in the bed." I watched him in the side mirror. He walked to the bed of the truck and set the compound bow down gently. He didn't just toss it, he placed it with care. Then he walked back to the passenger door and climbed in. The first thing that hit me was the smell. It wasn't the smell of alcohol or unwashed clothes like some hitchhikers I'd picked up. It was a cold, metallic smell, like earth and old copper. The air in the cab instantly felt 10 degrees colder. He shut the door, and we were plunged into intimacy. Just two strangers in a small box, speeding through the void. "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. My heart was starting to beat a little faster, though I couldn't explain why yet. "Up ahead," he said. He stared straight out the windshield. "A couple of miles. There's a turnoff." I put the truck in drive and started accelerating again. I didn't go 80 this time. I felt like I needed to be careful. "Crazy night to be out," I said, trying to make conversation. The silence was suffocating. "Have you been hunting?" No answer. "I just came from my folks' place," I rambled on, nervously filling the dead air. "Did you get to spend Christmas with your family today?" The man shifted in his seat. He turned his head slightly toward me, but not enough to make eye contact. He looked at the dashboard. "No," he mumbled. It was a flat, dead no. There was no emotion in it, no sadness, no anger, just a fact. And then he went immediately back to silence. I've had quiet passengers before, but this was different. This was a heavy, predatory silence. It felt like I was a prey animal that had just walked into a trap. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. I suddenly became hyper-aware of everything. The darkness outside, the fact that no one knew I had stopped, the weapon lying in the bed of my truck right behind my head. I just wanted him out. I pressed on the gas a little harder. "Here," he said suddenly. We were coming up on a gravel logging road that cut off to the right. It was a dead end that went back about a mile into a clearing that teenagers sometimes used for bonfires, but mostly it was just abandoned. I slowed down. "You want me to drive you down there?" "Just the turn off," he said. I pulled off the main road, but I didn't pull all the way in. I kept the truck angled toward the highway, ready to leave. I put it in park, but kept my foot on the brake. "All right, man, have a good one," I said, staring straight ahead. He didn't move. For about 10 seconds, which feels like an eternity when you're terrified, he just sat there. I could feel him looking at me. I was terrified to look back. I thought, this is it. He's gonna pull a knife. He's gonna strangle me right here. Then the door handle clicked. He pushed the door open. The interior light flicked on, blinding me for a second. He stepped out into the gravel, but he left the passenger door wide open. The cold wind rushed in. "Don't forget your bow," I said, my voice cracking slightly. He walked to the back, grabbed the bow out of the bed, and walked back to the open passenger door. I leaned across the center console to grab the handle and pull it shut, just wanting to leave. As I reached for the handle, he stopped. He stood right there in the open doorway, blocking me from closing it. He gripped the bow in his left hand. He leaned down, putting his face right in the frame of the door. The interior light illuminated him fully for the first time. His face was blank, pale, with eyes that looked wide and unblinking. He wasn't looking at me like a person looks at another person. He was looking at me like I was an object, like a deer in a scope. He just stared. He didn't say thanks. He didn't threaten me. He just burned holes into me with that dead stare. I froze, my hand halfway to the door handle. I didn't know what to do. If I moved, would he shoot? After another 5 seconds of this standoff, he slowly stood up straight and took a step back. I didn't wait for him to close the door. I grabbed the handle, slammed it shut, locked it, and stomped on the gas. My tires spun in the gravel before gripping the asphalt. I sped off, watching the speedometer climb back up to 80, then 90. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights chasing me, but there was nothing. Just darkness. But here is the part that really messed me up. The part that kept me awake that night. When I had pulled over at that turnoff, my headlights had swept across the entrance of the logging road. There was a vehicle parked there, tucked back into the brush. It was a beige minivan. It was parked facing the road, engine off, lights off. But the sliding side door was wide open. I don't know why, but that detail scared me more than the guy himself. A minivan, parked in the middle of the woods at 2 a.m. on Christmas, with the door gaping open like a mouth. Why was it there? Why was the door open? It looked abandoned. Or interrupted. I drove the rest of the way to Jenkins' house in total silence, shaking. When I got there, I made her lock every door and window. I told her what happened, but I think she thought I was exaggerating how scary it felt. I never saw on the news about any missing persons or murders in that area around that time. I checked for weeks, but I know what I felt. That guy wasn't a poacher. The way he moved, the silence, the minivan, it felt like I had interrupted something. Or maybe I was supposed to be part of whatever was happening, and for some reason he changed his mind. I still live in a rural area, but I don't stop anymore. I don't care if it's snowing. I don't care if it's an old lady. I keep my doors locked, my gaze straight ahead, and I keep driving. This took place about 3 years ago during the summer. I was living with my parents and my younger sister at the time. My sister had just turned 16, and she had her learner's permit, so she was obsessed with getting her driving hours in. Since my parents were usually tired after work, it often fell on me to sit in the passenger seat and supervise her while she drove around our town. It was a Tuesday night, probably around 9 p.m. It was July, so even though it was night, it was still extremely hot and humid. We didn't have the AC running in my car because the compressor was broken, so we had all the windows rolled down to get some air circulation. My sister was doing pretty well, just driving through residential neighborhoods and practicing her turns. She wanted to drive for another 20 minutes, so I told her to loop around near the commercial district before heading back to our house. There is a specific gas station at the corner of a busy intersection about 2 miles from where we live. I told her to pull into the lot so we could turn around and head back the opposite way. She pulled in, navigated around the pumps, and drove toward the exit that leads back onto the main road. This exit is a bit tricky. You have to pull up past the sidewalk to see the oncoming traffic because there are bushes and a large sign blocking the view to the left. My sister stopped the car right at the edge of the sidewalk, waiting for a gap in the car so she could make a right turn. Because it was summer, the crickets were loud, but otherwise, it was quiet in the car. We were just sitting there watching the headlights of passing cars. That's when we heard it. Hey, it came from the right side of the car, from the sidewalk area. It was very dark right there, because the street light above us was burnt out, casting that specific corner in total shadow. I looked over past my sister, out the passenger window. I couldn't see anyone at first. Then, I saw a silhouette standing near the edge of the bushes. It looked like a middle-aged woman, maybe in her late 40s or early 50s, but I couldn't make out her face clearly. She was just a dark shape in the gloom. "Can you help me?" she asked. Her voice was incredibly raspy, like someone who had been smoking for 30 years or had been screaming for a long time. It had a weird, desperate tone to it. My sister looked at me, a little panicked. She was a new driver and didn't know if she should just go or wait. I said to her, "Just watch the traffic, ignore her." The woman took a step closer to the car. "Please," she said, "I need a ride to my brother's house. It's not far. I leaned over slightly so she could see me and not just my teenage sister. "We're going the other way," I said flatly. I didn't want to engage, but she was standing very close to the open window. "I got off the bus too early," the woman explained. She was talking fast. "I don't know where he lives exactly, but I know the street. I just need to get there. I'm not a sketchy person, I promise. Please." I looked at the road. The traffic was relentless. It was a line of 5 or 6 cars coming down the street, moving at about 45 miles per hour. We couldn't just pull out. We were stuck there. "We can't give you a ride," I told her. "Sorry." "Please," she said again. Her voice cracked. "I just need help. I'm not crazy, I just made a mistake with the bus." My sister gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles were white. "There's no room," she said to me. I looked back at the woman. She was wringing her hands together. "I'm begging you," she said. "Just down the road." "No," I said, firmly this time. Stepped back from the car. She didn't move away, she just stood there, staring into the car. The raspy breathing was audible even over the sound of the passing engines. It felt like she was looking right at me, studying us. I started to get a really bad feeling in my stomach, the kind where you know something is off, but you can't place it. I kept praying for these damn cars to stop coming down the street so we could turn. Every second felt like a minute. Finally, the last car in the line, a red pickup truck, zoomed past us. "Go," I told my sister. She didn't hesitate. She hit the gas a little too hard, tires chirping slightly on the pavement, and we swung out onto the main road. As we drove away, I looked in the side mirror. The woman was still standing there on the corner, just a dark figure watching our taillights fade. We drove home in silence for the first few minutes. Eventually, my sister let out a breath and said, "That was creepy." "Yeah," I said, "probably just on drugs or something." "You did the right thing by not unlocking the doors." We got home, parked the car, and went inside. I told my parents briefly that some weird lady asked us for a ride, and they gave us the usual lecture about being careful and keeping doors locked. I went to bed that night. She had been reported missing on Tuesday night. I read the description. She had called her husband earlier that evening, saying she missed her stop on the bus and was going to try to walk or catch a ride. She was never heard from again. I showed my sister. She turned pale. "That's her," she said quietly. "That's the lady." We debated calling the police, but we figured we didn't have any information. We didn't see who took her. We didn't see a car she got into. All we saw was her standing there. We convinced ourselves that someone else probably picked her up after we left, or someone grabbed her right there on the corner. The guilt was there, stinging in the back of my mind, but I pushed it down. I told myself that if we had let a stranger in the car, maybe we would have been the ones hurt. Time went on. The flyers stayed up around town for a while, then started to fade or get torn down. Life went back to normal. About 2 months later in September, I was driving my own car this time. I needed gas and I pulled into that same station. It was daytime, so it felt less ominous. I filled up my tank and went inside to buy a drink. The cashier was an older guy who had worked there for years. He was leaning on the counter watching a small TV they had set up in the corner. I put my drink on the counter and looked at him. "Hey," I said, "did they ever find out what happened to that woman? The one who went missing near here a few months back?" The cashier looked at me, his expression grim. He shook his head slowly. "You didn't hear?" "No," I said. "I haven't seen an update. Police were here last week," he said, lowering his voice. "They found her." I felt a weird sense of relief for a second, thinking maybe she was found alive. "Oh, is she okay?" "No," he said. "They found her body in the cornfields a few miles west of here." My heart sank. "That's terrible. It's worse than that," the cashier continued. He leaned in closer. She went missing 2 months ago, right? July? Well, the police told me that based on the autopsy, she had only been dead for about 24 hours when they found her. I froze. The soda bottle felt slippery in my hand. What? I asked. She was fresh, he said bluntly. Someone had her. Someone kept her somewhere for 2 months. Kept her alive that whole time, and then killed her just last week. I walked out of that gas station feeling like I was gonna throw up. I sat in my car for a long time just staring at the steering wheel. I replayed that night in my head. The raspy voice. The desperation. I'm not a sketchy person. I just need help. She wasn't a trap. She wasn't a decoy for a carjacking. She was a terrified woman who had made a mistake with her bus route. Standing in the dark, begging 2 kids for a ride to safety because she probably felt like someone was watching her. Or maybe she just felt vulnerable. We drove away. We left her on that corner, and sometime after we turned that corner, someone else stopped. But they didn't drive her to her brother's house. They took her, and they kept her in a nightmare for 2 months before ending her life. If we had just unlocked the door, if we had just told her to hop in, it would have taken 10 minutes to drop her off. She would be alive.